Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Making Multifamily Money podcast. So I'm actually very excited to have on my good friend, Nate. So as a quick background of Nate, he's actually a fellow pharmacist. So we're both legal drug dealers, right? Licensed drug dealers. He's also a realtor, a real estate investor, and a father of two daughters, I believe, or two schoolgirls. And on top of that, while working full-time as a pharmacist, he started his own website, realestaterph.com, where he's focused on real estate education designed to help pharmacists. As you know, we're all skeptical. But also, he actually hosts the Your Financial Pharmacist Real Estate Investing podcast, and I had the pleasure of being on that twice. So welcome to the show, Nate. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on. It's fun to get on this side of the mic. We got to interview you twice, so this is great to be on this side.
Yeah, every time I talked, I was like, I kind of want to know more about you guys. So let's just dive right in. So tell me, Nate, tell us about yourself and your journey in real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So the short version of a long story is that I have trouble sitting still. I have a passion for being uncomfortable, and so when I get comfortable in something, I want to shift to do something different. So I was licensed pharmacist in 2013. Loved pharmacy work. My wife and I got pregnant with our first daughter in 2016. And at that time, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and realized that there was more out there than just working as an employee forever. So I wanted to find some ways to just diversify my own career, my own life, and found real estate and decided I'm going to jump in full, both feet and try to get licensed as a real estate agent and see if I like that. And knew that it would offer me an opportunity as a different career path too. So took that plunge, absolutely loved it, and have been working as a licensed real estate agent ever since. So we got into investing back in 2018, and that's taken off. And again, like you mentioned in your intro, we run the website. We do referrals all over the country. We kind of have our hand in a whole bunch of different things, and it keeps life interesting, keeps it fun.
Yeah, wow! I didn't realize you graduated 2013. That's when I graduated.
Yeah.
As well. And it seems like you had the 5-year itch, is what I call it, right?
Yeah,
You
100%.
graduate, you're focused on your career. Then after 5 years, you're like, this is pretty repetitive, and you quickly realize there's a ceiling, right?
Yeah.
There's a ceiling that you hit. So I kind of want to dive in a bit deeper. So when you graduated pharmacy school, did you have any student debt?
Yeah. So between my wife and I, also a pharmacist, we had $318,000 between the two of us that we had to tackle.
Okay, wow. And then when you kind of graduated, did you kind of have a plan of attack for that student debt?
Not in the least. We both did residencies out of school, and I remember vividly going through residency and knowing that those were being like turned on. And I was like, I don't understand what these loans are, how much I owe, how do I pay as little as possible because I make, $34,000 a year or whatever as a resident. And like, that's all we had. Like, so what we were going to do. So, yeah, I did not have a good plan of attack. It wasn't until, gosh, probably a couple of years later that we really started to attack those in a meaningful way. We just kind of ignored them, which was again a terrible plan, but we didn't know any better at the time.
No, I'm glad you shared that because, a lot of people don't know pharmacists, we have doctorate level degrees,
Yeah.
right? But we're doctorates in pharmacy and they teach us absolutely nothing about personal finance. I've maybe had one lecture during graduation week about personal finance at best, right? Yeah. And at that time, you're just trying to graduate. And then for you, you're focusing in on residency. So, I know you felt a little ashamed sharing that, but that's most pharmacists. I'll be honest. Yeah. Most pharmacists, we come out, even to this day, 10 years later, they don't, what's a 401k? Student loans, I just auto pay minimum payments. And so it's very common with that. But, like a lot of investors, you kind of mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? So that's kind of the book that turns the mindset. So I guess what got you to read that novel and what mindset shift did you have from that?
Yeah, it's funny. I've always loved reading, especially like, personal development and just, bestsellers, just things that the people have been recommending, right? And it's kind of been on that list of like, oh, you should read this book. And so everyone I talk to says, check this book out. And so finally it was like, okay, if we're going to have a child, if we're going to like plan for the future, there's going to be a huge change in expenses coming down the road, right? We're barely getting by at this point because of all the money I'm throwing at student loans, right? Because at this stage when I read that book, we were plowing away at the student loans, just trying to knock them out. I mean, throwing thousands of dollars at them every single month. And so then it became, well, what happens when we have daycare expenses and we have, like, what if I cut back on work, right? Or what if we have to cut back work? Like, what if, God forbid, one of our kids is sick? Like, what does that look like, right? So it just became this thing of like, well, I need to know more about personal finance if I'm going to actually have this child. And that seems like a weird catalyst, but that was the moment. And so it kind of forced me to look at, well, what books are out there that might help with this? That was one of them. Millionaire Next Door was another. There was a couple like that I was like, I need to read this because I think this is actually going to help with my parenting life. And so it was always on that list, and it became one of the good targets. And it, like you said, it just caused this switch to flick in terms of mindset changes.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that because, pharmacists, the one skill we do have is we're lifelong learners. That's kind of been instilled within us, like from day one of pharmacy school. And, it seems like for you, you're like, oh, I have this kid now. Basically, a kid, it's an extra mortgage. Daycare is basically another mortgage, right?
At least
for like one kid. So on top of your student loans for both of you, you got your living expenses, whether you're renting or you own a house. And now you got a kid where if both of you are working full time, you're going to pay for daycare. And when kids go to daycare, they get sick. And, we're pharmacists, we're paranoid as heck and skeptical of everything. And so it made sense that out of necessity, you were kind of pushed to basically learn and strain your finances with that. So, and, for me, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad too. That was kind of one of my first books. But like, what was kind of that key message that you learned from Rich Dad Poor Dad that really shifted that mindset for you?
It's funny. I don't know if I realized it at the time, but I think the biggest thing, there's a line he puts in that book. It's not, I can't do this thing. It's how do I do this thing? And we have taken that as like almost like our family mantra at this point, where we'll even, so the kids are older now. I've got a 7 and a 5-year-old. So one of the things we do every year, and we have for a couple of years now, is we sit down at the beginning of the year and we do this big goals list, and everybody gets to put their own goals on the list. We do a big hike and talk about the goals we want to have for the year. And what's cool is that the kids are starting to figure out that they can put anything they want on the list, but it's not, you can put anything you want on there, but you have to figure out how we can achieve that, right? So if it's like something like go to Disney World, right? So that was my youngest daughter's goal this year, and we went, was go to Disney World. Well, one of the things that comes with Disney World is that it's expensive, right? So part of that, and that's difficult for kids to understand, but what she can understand is that, okay, if we want to go to Disney, we need the budget for that, right? It's not that we can't go, it's that we can, but we can't spend money on plastic garbage at Target every week. And, all these other things that you might want to do have to take a back seat if the goal is to go to Disney, right? So it's not that, it's not how, it's how do we build that plan? So a lot of what we took away from that book at the time, and again, I've carried forward as, a whole family, is how can we do the things that we want to do? Not, oh, we can't do that, it's too hard, or we don't have money for that, we can't do that. And so we're really, really intentional about how do we make these things happen rather than, we can't do that or it's impossible.
No, I actually love that quote too, because that quote resonated with me as well. Like, it's not I can't do it, it's how can I do this?
Yeah.
And your how can may vary based on your situation, right? And what I really loved is that you're involving your kids in this, right? Like me and you wish we had this type of conversation at that age. Like for us, you have to get pretty good grades, good in college, get good grades in college, go to farm school, try to survive, come out with this massive debt, and you're just on this hamster wheel. You never questioned a single thing. Like, at least I didn't.
Same.
But it's amazing that like your daughters learn this at like 5 or 6, and then you are like have a doctorate level degree. She thinks you're a god, right? Because they're your kids, and like you're literally just teaching her something that like you just learned like not too long ago,
right?
So I'm reading a book, so no, really love that you're doing that, and then also involving your kids, because now they hear this at 6, they're already ingrained in this, like, oh, I can't do this, so how can I do this? That's the hope. So right. That's so like for me too, like I was just like, well, if you just say I can't do it and you write it off, like 100% guaranteed you can't do it. Yeah. But if you think how can I, there's at least a 1% or even 0.5% chance of achieving it. or
And
at least striving towards it.
it allows us this goals list, but other things as well. It allows you to just change your mindset toward and your priorities and realize what is actually important to you. So like one of the big goals we had a couple of years, the first year we did it was I wanted to step back and not work at 40 hours a week. I wanted to hang out with the kids. I wanted to get them off the bus. I wanted to get them on the bus. And so one of my goals was to step back from work in a 40-hour way. Like I don't want to work 40 hours. And we did it. It was like, okay, that becomes the most important thing. Well, then here's what needs to shift to allow that to take place. And so now again, we're blessed. My wife and I both work part-time at this point, and it's awesome. Like you can't beat it. And just because that's important to us right now, we're going to make that a top priority. And it's a matter of how can we make that happen? Not, oh, we can't do that because blah, blah, blah is expensive. It's no, how can we do that? What can we shift in our budget to make this happen? And we did. It's been awesome. So
yeah. So the key message I got out of that was you're living very intentionally, right? Like you purposely know, okay, I want to be part-time. And what's nice about pharmacy, it's easy to be part-time. Right?
Yeah.
You can work 1 to 2 days a week. And that's really accessible in healthcare in general for those who don't know.
Lucky.
But basically, because you had that goal, there's going to have to be some sacrifices, right? Like, you're going to have to save more money. Maybe you have to give up short-term gratification for a long-term goal. But every move you make, including your family, why you're doing it, because ultimately you want to be part-time and you're both part-time today, right? So it didn't come overnight. It became very intentional versus if, like, let's say you didn't question anything, went down the hamster wheel, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I just want to be part-time. Well, it's not going to happen right away, right? It doesn't happen overnight. So no, I really love that. So, okay, now let's just kind of dive into talk about a realtor, becoming a realtor. So that's not something that, I've done. So what kind of got you interested in becoming a realtor?
Yeah. So again, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and part of the other takeaway message that we didn't talk about was that I love this idea of being able to build a business or being able to build a diversification within myself, right? Not just one skill set. And so I think when I realized that I wanted to do real estate as part of one of those skill sets that I wanted to build out, I was in the middle of paying back student loan debt. I had no money to invest in real estate. Every penny I had was going toward student loan repayment or all the other random expenses we had to pay for regularly, right? So I was like, well, how can I get into real estate right now, even though I have no money, right? And the options would be, again, if you Google that, right, everybody's going to Google, when you read those books and you have no money, that's the first thing you do is like, how do I get into real estate with nothing? Yeah. And there are answers like, right, you get a good partner or start wholesaling. Well, I didn't have time for that kind of stuff. But what I did have the ability to do was go get licensed and see if I liked it. It was a really low barrier to entry. It was a great way for me to start learning real estate from the inside out. And it was going to get me close to all the things that I wanted to do, right? I could work with investors. I could start to learn contractors and contacts within the business. I could talk to lenders, talk to lawyers, all the people that I would eventually need for the real estate investing I wanted to do, even though I didn't have the capital to do that yet. So it seemed like a really easy next move for me, even though it's a licensed thing with a test and a bunch of classes and all this stuff. It was a relatively easy next move. And one that I could see having other payoffs as well, right? I could use that as a backup job if pharmacy didn't work out. Again, at the time, we weren't sure what we were going to do with the kids in terms of, was it daycare? Was one of us going to stay home? What does that look like? So it opened up a lot more options. And then once I started doing it, I realized that I really liked it. It was a great fit. I loved working with other healthcare professionals and buying and selling homes. It was just fun.
No, I love, you basically shared a concept called asymmetrical risk assessment, right? So basically your downside was $3,000 to $5,000 to become a realtor and some time. But I'll be honest, if you can finish pharmacy school, you can get any other licensure. It's easy at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like we're smart enough to get that. And I researched it myself too. So your worst case is you wasted time and you wasted maybe $3,000 to $5,000. But your upside was, okay, if I can do this, then I can get another stream of income. I can learn more about real estate, make some connections here and there. And maybe, pharmacists, we're high income W-2 for the most part. You might have some friends, some classmates who want to buy houses and maybe they'll go to you and 3% commission on a high cost of living area. It's pretty decent, right? So, and that could supplement either your if you work part-time or also maybe cover for daycare if you want to work full-time. So you basically make that bet. And I thought it was a very good bet. It's a very low low downside or high upside. So
Yep, that's it.
definitely
Yeah.
smart for that. But I guess when you got started as a realtor, like, I mean, I guess how much do you actually sell like right now? Like, what does your volume look like today? And like, I guess working backwards, how did it start off?
Yeah, so it started off terribly. I thought that every friend and family member that was like close to me, like you said, was going to come. Oh, Nate, I need you to help me buy this out. Nothing. I didn't do a single deal for 9 months, 8 months. So I mean, it was terrible. Like I didn't know how to market myself. I didn't have a niche. I had no experience. So anybody I went to who I even like remotely had a chance of helping them buy or sell a home, they were like, "How many transactions have you done?" And I'm like, done. So I didn't have the experience or the knowledge base of how to make this actually work. So it was about that 6 months mark or so of me doing literally nothing, while trying to put myself out there in ways that I thought were successful. That I said, okay, I need to adjust this. I need to change tactics. I need to come up with an actual plan, because if this is something I really want to pursue, like I need to do it for real, right? So
Yeah.
so I started talking with some people in my office, got a mentor within the brokerage, and really just started thinking about, okay, instead of trying to do what everybody else is doing, what is something that is unique for me? What is my unfair advantage, for example? And so for me, it was I am a healthcare professional. I'm a pharmacist. I know other pharmacists. I know the busy schedule of a pharmacist. I know the student loan debt problem of a pharmacist. Like I know all this stuff inside and out. And I also have a pretty good understanding of real estate investing. I've done a ton of reading, a ton of podcast listening, talking with lots of people. My father-in-law is a real estate developer. So like I had these pieces of an unfair advantage. And so at that 6 month mark, I really started to leverage that unfair advantage and tapped into the idea that like I'm going to be an agent for pharmacists. I am a pharmacist. I know what your life is like. I can help that out. And it just sort of clicked. It again, the website spawned from that. I started working with local pharmacists, helping them buy and sell homes. And it just again that niche sort of clicked. So today, in terms of like volume and transactions and stuff, I do anywhere from 8 to 20 deals, eight to 15 deals a year is about right. More or less than and one a month is pretty much standard for me. But that's the local deals, and then we do a lot of referrals all over the country. So we do dozens of those a year. We're referring people out to agents wherever they're looking to buy. We connect them with really good licensed agents wherever they're looking, again, buying or selling, investing, whatever. We do all that legwork for our clients so that they don't have to worry about it. So the local stuff, a good number, enough to keep me busy. And then the referral network is really where the meat comes from.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, like you said, the barrier to entry to become a realtor isn't high, right?
Mhm.
Anyone, most people who become realtors usually aren't good in school, right? That's kind of the traditional path, right?
That's fair. Yeah.
So, but it's very rare to have someone like really educated going to it. But because of that, we have that unfair advantage, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, right? That pharmacists are busy. That pharmacists are thinking about student loans. That, oh, how can I even pay off the student? How can I buy a house, right?
Right.
But with pharmacists, because we have a high income W-2, eventually we get to the point where most pharmacists do own a house after you've been out of school for a while, right?
Mhm.
So it's a very natural progression. I call it the golden handcuffs
Yeah.
of the rat race, unfortunately, right? You have a student loan, you have a mortgage. But it was nice that you leaned into what your unfair advantage was, to find clients, right? And 8 to 20 or 8 to 15 is pretty decent. I mean, it's enough to at least supplement your other part-time
Oh, yeah.
job, right? So like, even though it may not seem crazy, like you see people on podcasts like, oh, I do like 100 deals, 200 deals a year, but like for you, just one a month is probably good enough. And
Yeah.
it supplements what you need to do, and you just do referrals to other markets, and that's even more passive. You just say, hey, I'm connecting you with this other realtor, and if they close, great. If not, well, you didn't spend that much time, right? Like overall.